Hey everyone, welcome to Mental Health in Tech. So this is Skalk Venter. I am joined by Skalk Neetling as usual. And then, oh man, like this is the weird part where I never confirmed actually that I can pronounce your name correct because we just started when we started the call, we just started chatting right away. Is it Darko?
It is. It's basically how it's written. I tell people that Eastern Europeans don't have any imagination. So it's how it's written
Okay.
is how it's pronounced. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so you're not getting like any shulks or
No, 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 no,
that's
no.
one I tend to.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Well, so yeah, okay. We have confirmed Darko. So he's going to be joining us today. This is the very first one we're recording for this year, and we're just going to be chatting a bit about mental health and so forth, specifically in the world of tech. So I don't have much in terms of introductions for him. I think it basically goes along the lines of, so we're both on ZI Tech, and there's a mental health channel. And I think, we've had some discussions on there. And then at some point I just thought like, hey, maybe he'd be keen to just come chat to us on the podcast. So, that's about the context that there is. So I'm keen to learn a bit more in terms of, kind of your background. I know we do chat quite a bit on front end stuff as well, on ZI Tech. So yeah, but I think like I'll leave most of it up to you to kind of just disclose as we go. So one thing we tend to do, that we started doing, that kind of, I think our very first guest, Gideon actually introduced us to, and then we just kept on doing it, is we tend to start these sessions with just like a moment of kind of like openness and vulnerability and just kind of acknowledging like where we're at and how we're feeling and so forth. So yeah, I'm happy to start with that. And I think then I'll just hand over to Scott Neetling, and then I think we can just hand over to you, Darko, and you can maybe just kind of also take stock of where you're at and how you're feeling, and also kind of who you are, and just give a bit of background, and then we can take it from there. So yeah, I don't know, like this is probably the one where I'm the most ambivalent, that we've recorded thus far in terms of like where I'm at emotionally. Like lots of good things, also just lots of very stressful things, in terms of just like the realities of having a family and paying a bond and having to work for a living and all those things. And also, I just realized a couple, like maybe a couple of hours ago, that I forgot to take my meds today, which is sucky because I tend to start feeling like, hey man, why am I feeling so weird? Like why? And then I'm like, oh shit. And but then it's usually like I can't take it too late in the day. Otherwise, I've learned the hard way. I can't sleep at all. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So a bit kind of edgy and bit, I don't know, feeling a bit, in Afrikaans you would say broos, brittle. But interestingly enough, I can deal with that because it has like a very fixed timeline, and it's like, cool, like if I take my meds again tomorrow, like it's going to be better. So I'm like, yeah, just deal with it, which is maybe even something worth talking about, is that dynamic of it's very easy to deal with things if it has a finite time, and it's not like, is this going to be the rest of my life? But anyway, sure, that was a massive monologue. Okay, Skalk Neetling, I'm happy to hand over to you and for you to kind of give a bit of an overview of maybe quickly who you are and how you're doing.
Cool. Thanks, Skalk. So the other half of the Mental Health in Tech podcast, Skalk Neetling. I do get also the shulks and stuff, which is fine. I also get Neetling, which is fine. But yeah, the Afrikaans, I guess, pronunciation is Skalk Neetling. So, but yeah, who I am, like, it's changed in the last couple of months. But generally, I'm a person who likes tech. I am specifically or particularly excited and passionate about accessibility and about open source and about how communities can help one another, lift one another up. I love podcasts. I love making them. I have too many of them probably, but that's okay. And yeah, I mean, as of late November last year, I joined a startup called Boxy HQ and doing a whole bunch of stuff around security, specifically focused on enterprise SSO, directory sync, that kind of stuff. Very cool. I'm really enjoying it. And because it's a startup, it's fun because you get to do everything. All their skills is useful. We're like 6 people. So, like if you can do a thing, do it. So yeah, it's fun. I'm learning a lot about stuff that I wish that I probably should have known before I tried to do my own startup, which is cool. So now I'm learning that stuff. But yeah, so emotionally and that kind of stuff, not too bad. The 4 months or so after I left Mozilla in late July last year that was not cool at all. Like, I got myself into a financial situation that I never want to be in again, ever. I'm still not entirely sure how the hell it happened, but there it is. I'm kind of still digging myself out of it. But now that I have something that, a predictable income every month, that helps a hell of a lot. So other than that, really, I'm doing really well. I can't complain. I'm wishing for the end of January, if people understand that. It's one of those things. But once we get around the 25th of January, I'll start enjoying 2024 a little bit more. Other than that, I can't complain. I'm doing pretty good. So I'm super keen to learn more about Darko and like everything that you've done, where you're at, and your thoughts and feelings on tech, and then how we take care of our mental health in this crazy, fast-moving, unpredictable space. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Darko.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think on the joke about name pronunciation, I came here when I was 10 years old to South Africa, and you name it, I've heard it all, right? Lito, Darko, man, there's been so many. Kids are mean. So it's and eventually kind of the name that I used to dislike it, like it used to like be a problem, like, ugh, like, why do we come here? Why is my name so stupid? And then as I got older, I kind of just started owning it, and it's now almost like a personal brand, and I kind of enjoy it, and I like it when people mispronounce it. Then it's sort of like a way in, or like an icebreaker. So I do enjoy it when people do make an effort. Let me not get you started on my surname. But you guys mentioned the mispronunciation, and recently I got into a TV show called The Americans. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about it. And I'm at that part of the show where they are helping the ANC subvert an assassination plot by these Afrikaans nationalists. And they were talking about a Eugene Venter. And I was like, oh, Eugene Venter, right? Like he's the bad guy. So that got like a chuckle out of me. So I'm at that part of the TV show. Don't ruin it for me.
We make excellent bad guys.
But the accents were really, really well done. So I was pleasantly surprised. The attention to detail is great. Yeah, so we landed here fresh off the boat in 1994. We escaped a civil war in former Yugoslavia. And I was 10, my brother was 16, so I think he took it a little bit differently than what I did. For me, it was all just a bit of a blur. Here on holiday, and then, we landed 1st of January. I think school started on the 16th. So basically 2 weeks I was in a uniform and to school. right? Thankfully, the school, there were a lot of immigrants from African nations as well as other Eastern Europe. So for me, fitting in was a little bit easier. I think my brother, it was a little bit harder for him. He went to Parktown Boys, a boys' school, very, very different. But we've never opened up to each other about those beginning things, but that's how it started. And then just kind of coasted through school, never really took anything seriously. They put me up 2 years. So I matriculated when I was 16. And besides being different, or not different, but just sounding different, I was also younger, so it was very difficult to fit in. So I matured. I kind of was into the things that my classmates were into 2 or 3 years down the line, whereas when I was in matric, my biggest thing was Lego, but the matric guys, it was first team rugby, going out with girls, doing things like that. And I was like, whatever, I'm going to stay home and play Lego. So it was very different. And I jumped into tech because I didn't really know what else to do. I had a friend in high school who had computers. His dad was a programmer. And then we played StarCraft, the original StarCraft. So I really enjoyed that. And I was like, computers are for me. I did the technician thing. I fixed sound cards, replaced network cards, climbed roofs to change network cables, you name it. And then the internet kicked off around 2004, 5-ish. And then, started building things for the web and slowly moved my way from ad agencies to smaller consultancies. That was my first taste of actually being placed at a client or farmed out at a client, while actually working for a different company. And then, stabilizing a little bit, getting a little bit more confident, earning a little bit more money. It's hard to say mixing with the wrong crowd, but I then experienced what the other people experienced years before. So I started going out to clubs and stuff, and that maybe I should have invested in ETFs and things like that instead of spending money on Thursday nights. But I made some friends and I grew as a person as well. It was nice to belong or have a group of friends. And then that coincided with also me growing at work as well. Then I ended up, my first sort of big eye-opening experience was Intellect around 2016. I joined Intellect, and then that's when the world really got bigger for me. Their whole emphasis on giving back, in terms of tech accelerators, meetups, and then that's when everything accelerated. And then I think in my head, I was like, yeah, I know what I'm doing, right? Like, you should totally give me this, give me that. And I think that worked against me, but I ended up leaving Intellect to pursue my own thing. And then as much as I felt I delivered well and I executed well, the money, the runway just wasn't there. And then tailed between my legs, right? Had to get back into consulting. Things didn't work out with Intellect again, although that opportunity was there. I ended up going for a higher paying engagement through another consultancy. We can touch on the money things a bit later. And then I got into banking. I ended up working at Standard Bank on their internet banking team. And I then moved to the First Rand Group, worked for a company called Hyphen. They're what you can term a fintech in sort of the South African space, if you will. They did payments, they did collections, and they did distributed payments. So they have they're wholly owned by FNB, and their primary goal or objective is to be when the first rank group applies for tenders to the government to have above board payments. So when there's big money moves and it needs to be, there needs to be full audits, so no fingers in any pies. Hyphen were the arm that did that. So it was a joke, an inside joke at Hyphen, but around that 2018-19 load shedding period, just before COVID, we would laugh, saying that, cool, we got the instruction to pay the ESCOM debtors. And we're like, cool, in about 10 minutes, load shedding is over. And, right? And then there was an announcement, right? Money's been received for coal. We can go back to normal. So that was also very interesting, very eye-opening. I can expand a bit on that role later and how that impacted me. And then something I always wanted, genuinely, like something I always wanted. And I joined Takealot as an engineering manager. And I thought I peaked, and I loved it. And subsequently, I had a daughter. We moved into a bigger house. Life was good. Everything was great. And then I ended up, I don't know what happened. I felt I wasn't supported. I felt I wasn't set up to succeed in that role. And I felt alone. And then there were a couple of meetings. And then I felt that, like in the back of your head, you'd be like, guys, but, I'm working. I'm trying. Like I'm not. You almost feel like there's some sort of conspiracy going on. And I was like, listen, guys. Like, I mean, we're all professional. And then I said it as a joke. My manager, who was, at the time, and another sort of his peer. So my superiors in that organization. And as a joke, I said, guys, seems like there's a conspiracy where you're in creating procedures to, almost kind of force me into, doing certain things. And then they're like, laughed it off. No, don't be silly. And then when that meeting ended, I get a Slack, I'm like, there have been some comments. So I'm like, okay, you want to talk about it? And then over the next couple of days, the more I paid attention to the meetings and the more I paid attention to the subject matter and stuff. And I hit a point where I think my eyes just sort of welled up, and I said, guys, I've never been anywhere where I haven't been wanted, even a relationship, with an ex-girlfriend or anywhere. Like I never want to be anywhere where I'm not that I'm not wanted, but not where, not even to say appreciated, but just where it feels like I'm some sort of liability. And I said, that's how I'm feeling right now. I feel like a liability to you and how you want to run this team and how you want to run this. And I don't want to be that guy. And I said, I'm done, I'm done. Like, here it is, I quit, just so that I'm not going to say anything to anyone. I have a 2 months notice period. So you take your time and then you announce a transition period or whatever. But like, I'm done, guys. Like, genuinely, I'm done. I would appreciate it if you gave me some time so I could start interviewing, but like, I can't anymore. And yeah, the following days and weeks basically proved my point, and then I just sort of left. And that I resigned October 20, where are we in 24 now, 23, October 22. I got a job in March after that. So yeah, The last paycheck was 16th of December, and the first paycheck was 20th of March, because R&B pay on the 20th. So that was like a tough time as well. And yeah, that's kind of that was it at the time. How I'm feeling right now, I still think residual, not anger. I'm not angry, just disappointment, just I still think I'm harboring a little bit of disappointment that everything happened, because it was the role I wanted. As a front end dev, and then what really struck a chord was I recently pulled out an old hard drive that I had, and there was a folder on there, and it was Take-A-Lot redesign. And 2017, 18, I wanted to email or whatever, like blast Take-A-Lot on LinkedIn with like, hey guys, if you had a really good front end developer, this is what he could do for you, and I thought I was it, but I couldn't make the difference I wanted, and that just sat with me. At the moment, I am theoretically making good money, like I'm consulting, and it's good money. It's a breath of fresh air, especially with the rates increases with the new house and school fees for a toddler, and I am fucking miserable. I'm miserable. I am miserable. Yeah.
That sounds very familiar.
I'm miserable. I'm working in a role that I have no idea what I'm doing. I haven't felt that way since maybe 2006, 7. And I genuinely didn't know what I was doing then. But I'm using a tech stack I've never used before. I am trying to make deadlines that were set by a guy that had 10 years worth of context. And nobody seems to be listening, when I say, like, guys, and on top of just the massive domain knowledge that I'm lacking, just trying to piece all of those things together, the very strict development policies that apply, like merge requests, attaching things like cyber test reports, making sure that if there are any things that, so you need to know, like if you're breaking anything down the line, or if you need regression tests or whatever, that entire thing needs to be specified on a merge request, and it all sort of adds up. And then you're like, fuck, I'm never going to deliver this piece of code. And I'm at the point now where, in a similar vein to Take-A-Lot, I don't want to keep billing this obscene amount of money that they're expecting a senior, and they're getting an intern, and I feel bad. So yeah, I'm not enjoying my 9 to 5, but I'm sort of enjoying the home life, and it's difficult. And yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do come February, or whenever it is that I decide to resign finally. Yeah, I have no plan. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. So no, geez, man, that was amazing. There's so much to unpack there. I think we can probably spend the entire session just talking about some of the stuff you spoke about now, because there's so many touch points for myself as well, and just the little bit I know about Skalk Neetling as well. There's a lot of touch points with him as well. So, I know with the consulting thing and so forth, and man, it's what I find very interesting is that so many people that are kind of in the space where I find myself and you find yourself in as well, kind of ended up there almost by accident. Like it's just, like I didn't study tech. I studied visual arts. I wanted to become an illustrator, and then I kind of like actually worked a couple of days as an illustrator, and then I was like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life and get paid nothing. And, in retrospect, that was a very good decision because, like, sure, with kind of AI now, like, I don't even know what you do as an editorial. Back then, you'd still do, like, editorial illustration for, like, magazines and whatever. But, yeah, and, so that's a long story. I think I've covered it a couple of times before. But it's interesting also, like, how myself as well, and Nettling, I don't know whether it's the case with you as well, is that you're almost like in this perpetual state of trying to figure out what you're actually doing and where you're going. Whereas, for example, my wife, she has a background in pharmacology, so she went to go study. She's got a degree, and and then she did her community service year, and then she started working at a hospital, and and then like now, kind of we're raising two daughters, and so she kind of does locum work, which means like she like goes in to the like hospital like every X amount of days or whatever, and it's very much, that's kind of like the what would be the word, that's kind of the trajectory most people in that space kind of follow. And it's so interesting, like my own experience, like comparing it against that, and like it's just like, it just feels for myself as well, I'm like perpetually like trying to figure out, where am I going? Like, what am I doing? Like, where do I want to be in 10 years with this tech thing? But yeah, Scott Nettling, I don't know whether you can speak to that at all.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I was thinking about that quite a bit in a similar context. I think part of the reason why we might feel that way is just because when we grew up, most of us, like people my age, roughly, and maybe even 10 years younger than me or so, when you were in school and all that kind of stuff, the whole idea was that there was a pretty linear path from where you're at to the day when you move on to whatever's next. It was pretty linear. You go to school, you finish matric, you go to university, you get a thing, you get a job, you do it. When you're 65, you retire, you get a retirement fee, you do your thing, enjoy your grandkids, and then eventually you pass on. But life has changed. Like for most folks, for a lot of folks, there's no path anymore. You have to kind of carve that path. And there isn't even really that many cow paths yet. We were talking about it yesterday or this morning. I was talking with some of the folks at Boxy about this, that if you think about the whole evolution of the world, of the earth, like the evolution of us as human beings is a very small fraction of that. And then within that, if you take tech, like it's not even a speck, you can't even see it. We went from nothing to artificial intelligence in less than 100 years, much less than 100 years. And it upended so much about what we kind of knew and what we've accepted as the way that the world works and that life is, and this is the path that you walk. So there isn't even really cow paths we can just tread again. We're kind of still lying those cow paths. And then also we're in such a connected world now where we see things happening to people in all across the world. And it's everything from the mind-bending, like how in the world can you have $1 trillion, and to people who are starving from hunger. And you have that whole trajectory in between there. And you're sitting in the middle of all of this trying to figure out, what the hell am I even here for? What am I trying to do with my life? And because tech doesn't really, unless you have chosen like a very, 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 very niche thing, there isn't really a trajectory where it's like, now I've reached the pinnacle and I can retire and just go sit around and do whatever. like, I don't even know what retirement means anymore for me. Like, when is that? It's not an age thing, because that doesn't make sense. I'm not going to stop writing code and reading about tech when I'm 65 suddenly and lose interest. I'll always have this interest now. But yeah, what is it then that I'm going for? Where am I trying to go? So I don't know. For me, I've learned a whole bunch of lessons over the last, I think, 3-4 years. And we can dig into some of those things, because some of that's emotional stuff. Some of that is like understanding that don't drink the Kool-Aid too much when you're at some companies who try to position themselves as a family system instead of an employer-employee relationship. Be careful, because it might hurt a lot when you realize that you've been duped. And then also realizing that the opportunities that people have across the world is not equal. And what the opportunities you have in South Africa, for example, compared to somebody in San Francisco is vastly different. What is expected of you in a country like South Africa versus San Francisco is also significantly different. And therefore, you might get a rude awakening when you try to do something and find that the support systems that you thought would be there doesn't exist. And then you feel like you're a fish in a very, very big sea. And you're like, I don't even know where I am, but I feel afraid because I'm not sure if there's sharks in these dark waters that I can't see. So I think there's just a lot of uncertainty, and there isn't a clear path. So you kind of have to figure it out. And I think for me right now, I'm trying to find things that I'm trying to do things that I find interesting and meaningful. Where I do them matters less to me. It's more about the end result. And I've decided, like, there isn't probably a date when this will stop. I will just keep doing interesting things until there's nothing more interesting, or I'm just not able to do anything anymore because health reasons or age, or the robots have taken over and we just sit in chairs with straws watching TV all day. But that's it. I think it's just hard, right? And AI has come and thrown a massive spanner in the works. Like, there's so much uncertainty being introduced by that. I feel so horrible for junior devs and people who started in the development in the last 2-3 years, because there's so much talk on the internet right now by people that, you know, when you look at them, you're like, I should probably listen to what this person is saying. People speaking at places like MIT, 2 students who's doing a degree in computer science, saying in 5 years, most of what you do today will no longer be needed. And you're going to have to think about that, because everything's going to change. And these poor young folks are sitting there. Oh my God, this is super expensive. And should I not be doing this? And there's so much, because nobody knows. That's the big thing. Nobody knows. They can't say. Even Sam Altman can't tell you exactly what's going to happen in a year's time with this stuff. It's too unpredictable. So I think it's just a lot of stuff's happening, and AI has complicated a lot. And I'm not surprised that a lot of people are just throwing up their hands and saying, oh, I don't know anymore. I told my wife the other day, because of some stuff that's happening, like with Substack and the whole Nazi thing, and everybody has to get off Substack because otherwise you're labeled like you're Nazi, whatever. So I was just like, can we just unplug everything, burn it down, and start over, because I don't know anymore. So yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of like, what the hell and what the fuck, and I don't know where I am and where I'm going. And I don't know. I don't have an answer. I just have a lot of words to say about it.
I'm super curious about this Substack Nazi thing. Like, I know what I'm gonna do tonight when I'm lying in bed and I can't sleep. I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole and just go and Google Substack Nazi. But yeah, so no, I get that, and I think obviously with you're kind of the big prominent thing is AI, but I also think there's a lot more subtler things that are maybe more insidious, and one of them being like the tech market at the moment. Like, like the job market is just sure. Like I think someone shared some stats yesterday, and I actually think it was I think it's actually related to the ZI Tech job postings channel, and I think someone looked at all the job postings from last year compared to the year before, and there's like. And I think like also looked at like some other platforms or what all, and there's a sharp decline in terms of like the I don't know, I'm a consultant, so I speak in terms of hourly rate or whatever, salaries, and just like you see things like the Carl Simpson who did I don't know if any of you guys followed that.
Yeah.
Like he had this whole thing where he kind of publicly on LinkedIn like documented his like job searching like journey, and he had a tough time, so obviously, we can talk also about Carl Simpson. He is also a bit of a divisive figure, but at the very least, man, like if you've probably written the book that anyone needs to read after they've read Eloquent JavaScript or after they've read JavaScript the good parts, and you're struggling to find work, like, sure, man, I don't know what that says. So yeah, it's like that also is I find very troubling. And I think specifically as someone who's mentored a couple of people the last couple of years, it's like, sure, man, like what are they going to do? But it is what it is. But and Darko, you mentioned about like interest rates and stuff. So I'm in the exact same boat. I also want to mention as well, Skulk. So you mentioned that thing about like you ended up in this position and you don't really know how you got there or when it happened or whatever. And like, yeah, man, I've been there. It's and so then it's like you have all this stuff going on that's very tough for quote unquote neurotypical people to deal with, then throw in like all your weird, like emotional and like mental quirks and makeup. And, sometimes I just like, I have a hard time if the cashier at the store just looks at me strange, and it's like, now I have to deal with all this stuff as well. So yeah, it's tough. But I want to kind of touch on something specific. So Darko, you kind of spoke about this feeling of, kind of, I don't want to say being sidelined but like kind of being, I don't necessarily know how to describe it, but I understand it so well. I've been there before where it's like being a liability. Yes. I think that's the kind of the wording you used. I've been there at two places in my career before. I've literally cried in my manager's office, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I am trying. I feel like I'm running myself into the ground, just trying to provide value. And everything I get is just negative signals. Like it feels like there's no. It's not even about like positive reinforcement or whatever, but just in terms of, if you're not providing value, then you're not providing value. You also don't want people to be like, oh no, buddy, it's all right, don't worry. But and it's not necessarily that you're not providing value. It's just like there's a mismatch in terms of what you provide and what is required, or how what you provide is perceived, or whatever. Man, that's tough. Like I've been there. Geez, like, and yeah, I don't know. Like Skulk Netling, I don't know if you can maybe speak to that, or you've had similar experiences.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Darko, I mean, you're in an unenviable situation at the moment. But I do think that, and I think what Skulk said just now about the job market, that doesn't help, right? Because you're kind of like, if I jump ship now, because like LinkedIn has kind of become my new favorite social network, strangely enough. It seems the healthiest of the bunch right now. But with that said, I do find it damn depressing most of the days because there's so many people looking for work. I mean, I saw one the other day of somebody saying, I just want a job, please. That's it. That was his whole message. And I'm like, holy hell. This person is at their end. They're done. They're like, I just want a job. Just give me a job. Anything, really. So when those things just keep running by and you hear like there's another massive layoffs again, you're like, oh, whoa, no, something's not right. Something is going really, and then Google comes out and says like, oh no, we had to reduce our force because of the exciting new things we're going to do. I'm like, you need less people to do that. Interesting. I think people make the company, right? Not the company doesn't make the people, but oftentimes the people on top and the investors don't see it that way. But I think I'm glad you could move on from Takealot when you did, because life's too short, man. But I was in that exact position where I was like, I don't even fucking know what I'm doing anymore. I have to leave because I'm going to get to a point where I'm unemployable because I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm messing about with this thing, playing in a spreadsheet, making Google Docs all day. What the hell? If I go from here and I try to find a job and people say like, what can you do? I'd be like, I'm not sure, to be honest. What did you do at your previous job? I don't know. They paid me money and I'm not sure what I did. And also this feeling of not adding value. I think people underestimate the value of that to an individual. They think like, but you get a salary. That only lasts for so long. Then it's like, it's just money, right? When you don't have money, it sucks. But anyway, you do want that fulfillment. You do want to walk in and feel like you're doing something and it's adding value to this business that you're a part of. I don't know. I don't want to ramble on too much, but I think it was definitely a good thing to move away from Takealot. The way it happened is just absolutely horrible.
Yeah, it's also probably I could have also been when you look back at it, like it was just how I experienced it, right? What kind of made it or made that experience worse for me was that there wasn't any kind of, hold on, like this seems rash, let's pull the brakes, let's figure it out, right? There wasn't any of that, right? And then thinking back to that, like, fuck, like how bad was my performance? Like it was 2 years. I survived 2 performance reviews, a bonus and an increase. Something I must have been doing something right. The team went from 4 to 8, and there were promotions internally, promotions that I felt I facilitated. The team morale improved. I thought that the team got better with me there. The individual contributors in that team were all excellent and incredibly high performing people, and they made it easy. But to get them there was also part of that role for me, and I thought I did that well, and I just couldn't understand it. So, but it's the main, I think, message was that I felt I wasn't really supported and set up for success, and that's what it kind of made me emotional, or just, I don't even know what the word is, but just kind of like, you know what, it's okay, I give up, right? My hands are up. I don't want to you have to put me on some performance improvement plan. Like, I don't want to be here that much, so I'll do you a favor and I'll walk away, and I even made it easier for them. I said, like, you know what, I know it's like a 2 month notice period. I don't care. I don't care for the money. I don't care for anything, right? You can give me a salary on the 25th whenever it comes, and then just I'll go. I'll leave. You know, it doesn't have to be awkward or anything like that. And yeah, so I try to make it as easy as possible. And then basically the last couple of days, I hardly spoke to anyone, you know. I think I just logged on to daily stand up. And then after that, I turned off, you know, I sat on my couch. That's kind of the point where it got, yeah.
Yeah, that's really tough. I've definitely been in situations before where, and I think that's I've like, man, I resonate so much with kind of like kind of what you just told. Like I've been there before, and you know, I've been in situations where there was either a mismatch of, you know, what was expected and what I thought was expected, or you know, I've been in positions where I'm overqualified and they want something more basic, and they want something that you can build in like 2 minutes and push out, and I'm spending like an entire week getting it ready because like the level of engineering that I do is different than what they kind of needed, you know. So but like I've been in situations where that wasn't as bad, like where that was part of a conversation. And I think that's the ones where I've been in those situations, the ones that have rattled me the most is where it wasn't part of a conversation. And it kind of sounds like that is what you're referring to, is like, I've definitely been in a situation, and you know, I don't want to talk about it too much because it's fairly recent-ish, where it's literally a decision was made, and that was it. And the people who I worked with and who I met with on a regular basis is just like, that I'm not going to see them again. Like, especially, I think especially now in the online thing, it's like, you know, very much like, okay, cool, but if a decision has been made, there's no reason for you to kind of join the calls anymore, whatever. And it's also weird if a decision was made and now, yeah. So I understand the dynamic there, but man, like that fucks with you, dude. Like, you know, it's like you're literally just like doing your, and then it's just like a decision, and you realize I'm never gonna have a call with these people ever again. I never ever got the opportunity to say like, oh yeah, I'm heading out. Cheers, guys. You know, I wish you all the best or whatever. Man, it's yeah, that rattles you, dude. Like where it just goes from 100 to zero, like in an instant. Yeah, it's tough.
What also hurt, I think, ultimately was that as a manager or as a team lead, the team, right? Like, you know, you facilitate one-on-ones and you speak about things, and there were a lot of personal things shared, you know, and like a lot of the time it's like, hey, I'm kind of looking to go elsewhere. Should I stay? And then you kind of be like, you know, maybe you should stay, but like, how can I? And then those conversations that were personal and I felt that were quite, I don't even, yeah, well, what's the term? But like, it's the things that you share and sort of the time for vulnerability, right? It was like, hey man, like, I know I'm worth more. I want to stay here. Will you help me stay here, but then, you know, earn more? And then you kind of try and figure out a plan to facilitate this guy's, I mean, because if you're talking about like 10x engineers, this guy was it, you know, we like kind of within that domain, and you try and make a plan and you put yourself out there, and then at the end, I almost get it, right? Like, oh, he's leaving, you know, don't say anything, whatever. But then also like, yeah, I had a at whatever email address, but then you know, I'm also just like a human or a person, you know. I'm a dad, I'm a friend. I don't, I didn't defraud the company. I didn't, try and murder the CEO or anything like that, right? Like to my knowledge, I gave everything I had until I just felt like, it wasn't a good enough, not a good enough. It felt that I just wasn't providing that service that they expected of me, and I chose to step away. So that hurts, but given the years of experience that I've had, leaving and kind of keeping in touch with old coworkers, I'd learned to deal with it. But yeah, it took me a while to sort of make peace with it, and then, especially with the jobs thing, and stop me if I'm rambling, but it's the take a lot thing. It ended the way that it ended, with me not having anything as a backup, because I started, man, April 21, I think, at Take a Lot. And I'd left Hyphen primarily because of I wanted a different role. I'd done a lot. I was hired as an Angular developer, and I built various different dashboards for their payment systems, etc. And then there was a bit of a power vacuum or a direction vacuum when the outgoing CIO left, and they took a while to hire someone within the group. And I took that opportunity to kind of, mobilize, galvanize the tech team, or set some things in place, things devs take for granted, right? Like GitLab, GitHub. There weren't, when you look at things now, like deployments, right? Hyphen used to deploy things on flash sticks. There was an actual printed piece of paper with everybody's signatures, and the Linux administrator guy would take that flash stick. There was a tar file, not a tar file, a WAR file, right? Which is sort of some Java hosting thing, JBoss, right? It was JBoss. And he would manually, like CP, MV, whatever he did with those controls, right? Then he would manually do SQL updates on the SQL server if that was also required. I mean, this guy would do it at 8 p.m. He would go home at midnight. And I was like, dude, this is fucking wild, right? And they were paying millions of dollars for Atlassian. And I said, Atlassian's got this thing called Bamboo, and it'll change your life. And it took me about 4 or 5 monitored deploys before they were like, that's cool, guys. You deploy whenever you want. This isn't an issue anymore. And a lot of similar processes got implemented by me, and there was a meeting, and I said, give me any role. Like, let me do that role. I'll happily do that. You don't have like a 2IC or anything like that. I don't need to be anybody's boss, but just let me help you make these technical decisions to improve processes, right? Like, and the conversation was like, yeah, maybe we just want to keep you as an Angular dev because we're kind of created that job advert for the role you want, and we're going to give it to somebody else. And I was like, okay, cool, great. And then I resigned that day. And it wasn't that difficult to get a role after that, Take a Lot. But then whole COVID thing started, and we got pregnant, and, at home, and then, got a house. And then we managed to skirt around COVID, and then we got COVID, the little one, and my girlfriend, they ended up in hospital. And that kicked my ass, like emotionally, like, I didn't know what to do. And and then, yeah, like, just taking leave felt like, guys, I'm positive for COVID. I don't have any symptoms, but my family is in hospital. I need to take leave. Yeah, but if you're fine, maybe, you can like, and then I literally just turned the laptop off. And I logged on a week later, right? And I think that's when it all really started. So yeah, that was tough. And then yeah, I think it was a mix. It was a mix of me, a mix of them, a mix of me being at home. Yeah, like listen, I know we've got limited time, but like we haven't even touched on like the I don't know, like when you're on Reddit and you read things about how other millennials or Gen Xers were raised by not absent parents, but parents that had to work. Coming here as immigrants, there was no money. Like genuinely no money, guys. Like, yeah, my mother basically walked into Mill Park Hospital and she said, like, cool, I'm a nurse. I know what I'm doing. I'm here on a tourist visa, but if you give me a job, I can apply for permanent residence. I'll work for peanuts. And they did. They worked for peanuts. My dad caught a train. We had no car. I walked to school. And then around it took us about 4 or 5 years before my dad finally managed to find a job that paid him a human wage. He wasn't just getting $500-600 a week. He was now all of a sudden bringing home like 12,000-13,000 a month. It was a massive jump. They could buy a house. We could go back home and visit. It basically catapulted us into sort of lower middle class, and that's sort of where that's where my, I don't know, kind of, it isn't resentment, and now I'm going off topic, but where I see myself with my kid and how I was raised. And when I got here and when I was in school, it was a very big fight between integrating and then coming home to a very hard Yugoslav household, and then being told like, South Africans, they don't know anything, those kind of acerbic is kind of a word I learned. That's how my mother talks. She's very acerbic. It's very sort of sharp, direct, hurtful things. I don't like. I like my mom, but she definitely had a big role in how I deal with my interpersonal relationships. So, just growing up with basically being at home for about 5-6 hours before I went to sleep, and then kind of being systematically programmed to be Yugoslav and better than the South Africans, smarter, and then being at school and having friends and forgetting how to think in Yugoslav. I started thinking in English almost immediately, and then trying to then communicate to my parents in another language where they didn't understand me and I couldn't explain myself to them. And I think that maybe still impacts me to this day, where I'm unable to vocalize my feelings because of, maybe being afraid of that, like, oh, you don't know anything, or like, what do you know? And, like my mom, she'd get irrationally angry for no reason, like genuinely like no reasons. I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't into any weird shit. Like I came home, played with Legos. I was on my bike till sunset, and that was it, man. Like I gave my parents zero trouble, but just having that kind of fear, and I'm not sure if you guys experienced it, but I've read it on Reddit, and where if my mom was in a good mood, things were good, right? Like the house was at peace. But as soon as my mom was in an otherwise mood, it was like, you know, let's like tippy toe and stuff like that. And I think I've carried that into a lot of my personal and then professional relationships where I almost feel like I'm manipulating a situation, not for my benefit, manipulating in terms of, I'm going to make this guy give me his Bitcoin, but I'm going to structure my words to maybe put this guy in a mood where, it's not going to be a difficult situation for me. Things like that, where I had to almost emotionally manipulate my mother in a way, like, oh, by the way, whatever, or I do something and then ask her, can I go out and play? So I think that plays a big role in me negotiating for things and doing stuff like that. And, whereas South Africans, or I think culturally, you guys are open to be yourself. You had what I'm assuming, right? From the majority of my friends, you guys are open to be yourself and home is safe. And all I've ever wanted was home to be safe. So when I'm at home, I know I'm safe. And, I have a partner that makes me feel safe. And I have a little girl that's I'm there. Like she loves me. I love her. Like we have this incredible relationship. But I know something inside me is not correct with regards to how I was raised. And I wanted to be a confident little human, especially as a girl. I'm not oblivious to internet's culture wars, all of that stuff, right? Like some divisive figures online, minimizing, women and their role. And I, as a partner to a strong woman, I want to be a father to a strong woman, but I don't know how to be that, So I do my best to make sure the home is safe. We have everything we need. She's got all the toys we need. And then I rely on my partner to kind of project her confidence, because like you said, like your wife gets on with it, like she got her degree, she got her job, and that's it, right? Like my girlfriend, she basically held down a day job. She had her own side hustle. She did an MBA, and she was a new mom in the span of 2.5 years. And I'm the one having mental breakdowns with people that sell fucking power banks on the internet. You know what I mean? Right? So like I'm the one having mental breakdowns and she's like, what are we having for dinner? Like breastfeeding, like submitting assignments. And like, I was like, how the fuck do you do it? And here I am like, oh my God, my boss hates me. I'm going to quit. Like, and then, yeah, so it's such a weird polarizing thing with us where like, I'm being like, she's like, how was your day? And I'd be like, I hate it. Like this code, I don't even know what it's doing. I'm gonna do this and I'm in such a funk. And how was your day? Oh, it was fine. I took the dog to get the stitches out. I went to go see this other guy. I got groceries for the week. I closed like 1 million different deals. I'm gonna take the kid to swimming. Then I'm gonna make dinner. And I'm like, fuck, I wish I had just like 5% of this mental ability that she's got to compartmentalize just her thoughts. And it's incredible. And then she'll go to sleep, she'll wake up, and then back on it again, Yeah. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. It's I think also like I think obviously I actually don't know that much about like Skalknetling's like history in terms of family life and so forth. But like I did, like for myself and everyone that I grew up with and so forth. It's also been challenging, specifically generational. Because our parents grew up. My dad was, he was conscripted to the border war. He was, he had to go and fight the communists, like on the border. And I'm saying communists, in quotes here, because that was kind of like apartheid South Africa. But yeah, like and I think I have to give him credit. My dad I have a lot of respect for just the ways in which he's tried to navigate the new reality that is so different from what he grew up with, and the degree to which he has been open to rethink some of the stuff that he grew up with, whereas opposed to I see some of my friends' dads and so forth, they're just like, everyone else is the problem. Like the way I was raised and whatever, everyone else has lost their way, but like that being said as well, like there were just like specific tools that he just didn't get growing up, and things he wasn't ever taught, just from that era. And obviously, and because of that, he hasn't been able to provide them to me, due to no fault of his own, but purely just because he grew up in an era where, you don't talk about emotional stuff. And as someone that kind of grew up with a lot of mental problems and stuff, I definitely felt like I had to figure all this stuff out myself as a teenager, and as a young adult, I literally had to figure out all these weird compulsions, and no one had any answers. No adults really knew anything about any of this stuff, and it was mostly just just think, stop being so negative, or you're overcomplicating things, or whatever. I'm not talking about my parents. I'm talking about adults of that generation in general. And it's for a very long time we think like you're the problem, and what's wrong with you, and how do I not be like this? And then you kind of get older and you get more experience to this. And obviously, as you mentioned Reddit a couple of times, obviously the wider internet at large, and you kind of get exposed to a lot of different people across the world and a lot of experiences and things. And you kind of realize this is actually much more common than I was. And I think that's also one of the reasons why we started this kind of mental health in tech thing, is because I think we realized this is so pervasive, and everyone that we talk to that are dealing with these things think that they're the anomaly. Think that I've definitely been in situations where I've opened up to coworkers and stuff, and then it's just this cascade of, oh yeah, this guy as well, and oh, this guy is struggling with this, and oh yeah, this other guy, and and it's what? We're literally just an entire company of people that are just emotionally just hanging on, and I thought I was the anomaly here. So I think there's also something to be said about that. So I definitely, I can resonate with that a lot, and I think you and I started talking. I think one of the first exchanges that we had specifically on ZA Tech was kind of, I think you asked, we had a conversation about prescribed minimum benefits and stuff. And so I assume that you started going, or considered, or went to a psychologist or so forth. I don't know if you maybe want to give. Is that the first time you've gone to someone, or?
No, not at all. Again, my mother thought I was a problem child, so she took me to. So my mom's a nurse, right? So yeah, there's no injection or medicine big enough that can't cure whatever's wrong with you, So that's kind of her thing. And I went to a few, and it was never. I I didn't know, right? I didn't know. I again, like, I didn't know why I was there. I didn't know what to talk about. Obviously, she wanted to see if I was on drugs or in some gang or whatever, right? But I didn't know how to talk. I didn't know how to talk because I was never free to talk at home. And, for the earlier part at school, I was just different and I didn't have anyone to talk to. So there was nothing in common. I wasn't on any first teams or, you know, I look back with regret that I wasn't more involved in school, and I really wish I was. I look fondly back on that time, and I wish I did more. And when I see old classmates on Instagram and stuff and whatever, like, I make a really like a point to comment like, hey man, like, nice to see you. Like, I'm glad you have a nice family, it's been a long time. Hope everything's okay. And it's, and when, when I started, when I started being my own person was the day I moved out. And that was around 2013. I had enough money. I bought my own place and I moved out. I ate toasted sandwiches, popcorn, and macaroni for a year. But I had a TV, I had Netflix on VPN, and I had my own bed, and I slept when I wanted to. I was up when I wanted, and that's when I became my own person. And that's when I, started being in more meaningful relationships at work and, with girls. And it was open. I could talk and I wasn't afraid of sharing. And then only after a while, and did I realize that, hold on, this, I, the thoughts in my head, it's sort of normal, right? There are people that do experience this and do feel insecure and do have anxiety and like, so surely there must be a way to figure that out, or at least focus that energy somehow or open up about it. And then only when I only took it seriously when it started impacting my relationship. And things are good. I'm a good person, I think, overall, but I think I'm a great guy to be around when the anxiety is gone, right? When I've got money in my bank account, when everything's okay, I feel on top of the world. We can go for a drive, grab some ice cream, grab a Prego, a hamburger, wherever, right? Like, that's when I'm my most charming or my most outgoing and extroverted kind of guy. But then for about 30-40% of the time, I deal with work stress, right? Like, now all of a sudden it's a little bit longer till payday. What do you want for dinner? It's like, I don't know, whatever, right? Like, whereas if everything was okay, what are we going to eat for dinner would have been like, I don't mind, let's go get some sushi or let's go do whatever, right? Because I'm comfortable that I know that I can pay for that. So only when I got with Jonah, with my girlfriend, and when I put it all together that this is it, right? This is it. This is who it is. Like, here it is. Here is this human. That's it, right? Like, this human is this human, and then we are going to do this thing for the rest of our lives. And was how I felt. Like, here it is. All the sitcoms, all the romantic movies, like that whole thing. Here she is. And more so than just love at first sight and butterflies and all of that. It was just that sense of safety, and just when we got home, we were home. I was home. She was there, and I was home. Right. Even now and again, like I also experienced it today. Like she went somewhere and she was on her way home. What do you want for dinner? I don't care. Just get home. I don't care. Right. I'll eat cardboard. I don't care. Just get home. Get home. When you're home, we'll figure it out. Right. So, and I realize I say shit like that, and I try and pull it back, and I try to be a little bit more. But when I realized that she was home and she was safe, and that everything made sense, where I wanted to be, how I wanted to be was now for her, that's when I was like, okay, cool. Let me not do any weird shit that'll mess up this relationship. And yeah, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that she never leaves, and yeah, so that when I realized that it was impacting my relationship, I don't know if it's a common topic or whatever, but issues about like intimacy, right? I struggle with that. It's not at the top of my head. I'm not a very overtly sexual person or anything like that. So like, it's, I need signals, or I need guidance or whatever. So it's not, and it's something that has been an issue in like a previous relationship, and it is in the current one. And when she was like, this is a problem, figure it out. And I was like, I'm sorting it out. Right. Okay. And then it's ongoing. Obviously I'm trying to sort it out, but that's when it was also post Take a Lot and post everybody being in hospital. And then I found it was a Psych Central. Was it Psych Central? Psych Central. There was a very lovely lady. My goodness, her name was. I'm trying to find it, but they don't have her name. Haley van der Berg, at Psych Central. What an incredible person to talk to. It took her maybe 2 or 3 sessions to kind of get to the roots. And she was like, you're not ADHD, you're none of that. Like, you just deal with a whole bunch of other things. And she was incredible. Unfortunately, I couldn't justify the money. It was just over 1,000 Rand weekly. And Discovery kept fighting me, and it kept going off savings. And then at that time, the little one was dealing with tonsillitis a lot. So we, used that, and the money kind of ran out. So when I could justify it, I had a session. When I couldn't, I didn't. And especially post Take a Lot up until March, there wasn't really any available money going around. So I stopped. But and I would like to pick it up again. The sessions we had, I think about 8 or 9 sessions. It was great. It really, really was. She would give me homework. There were some questionnaires. I answered a few, and it's nice to answer it truthfully, And yeah, it was good. It was good. I do feel that I got benefit out of it, and I changed perspective on quite a few things. I also like to think that, like Chat GPT, like I do get better over time with different inputs. So I think I'm getting better with different inputs. And yeah, it was good. I would love to. I will. Not that I would love to. I will. I will reach out to her again and hopefully resume the sessions, because I think that it's benefited me. Yeah.
Yeah. geez, yeah, I get that. Like, I'm also at the moment, I'm also on and off because I'm just on a hospital plan, which basically means like the only thing that's covered is, if like my wife or any of my daughters get hospitalized, that's the only thing. So literally, like to me, like when I go for a session, it's like, oh, debit card, swipe, beep, that's there we go. It's like at the grocery store. So yeah, you feel that you're like, sure, and it's such a sucky situation because it's also, you understand that, like this is a trained person and this is a person who's dedicated their life to this, and and they have all this knowledge. Like, would I be okay if someone paid me 50 Rand an hour? But then on the other hand, it's a lot of money, and it sucks. It really sucks. But yeah, I honestly, I don't necessarily myself even know what the answer is there. Like,
We should start a fund.
But
we should start a fund.
Yeah,
just steal money away. I think there's like a collective. And then if you feel you need some sort of help, like here, the fund will pay like the first 2 or 3 sessions. And then,
Yeah, well, there you go. So start our own medical aid, basically. That's what you just described. We just invented the concept of medical aids again. But yeah, so no, like Skulk, I don't know if you're currently seeing anyone.
No, I need to go back for just the like practical purpose of like my prescription is run out. So if I don't go, the pharmacy will tell me to go away. So even just from that perspective, I do need to. But I mean, I do need to speak to the person as well. It's been too long. So I definitely need to do that. I need to do that in February. From a practical perspective, like I said, the prescription thing, but then also just, it's been too long. But it's bananas to think that we even have to have a conversation like this, right? Where it's a trade-off between am I eating tonight or am I taking care of my mental health? It's like, this shouldn't be a conversation, but it's broken all over the world, right? Like mental health is just, it's a mess. It's extremely expensive. It's one of the biggest reasons why the United States is struggling with the homelessness problem they are is because mental health is not being treated properly. And people are ending up on the streets because they're not getting the care they need. And things just compound. One thing compound on the other one. And then you throw drugs into the mix and now you got a massive problem. Because now you're taking drugs that's just messing up your brain's chemistry even further. And you're getting to a point where there's really no return anymore. It's like how then you get these solutions where people are like literally giving you the drugs just with a clean needle, just so that and staying with you so that should you overdose, they can try and save your life. It's essentially, it's almost like somebody that's on their deathbed and you're just like giving them oxygen. They're actually done for already, but it just seems inhumane to just let them die. So you try to do something, but in fact, this person is lost. They're gone. It's just a matter of time. And it's so hard to see those things happen and to think that this was all preventable. If this person had like you said, Darko, the 2 or 3 sessions when they really needed it, their life could have been much, much, much different. I mean, I've seen these people, like when I was in Portland, Oregon, in America, I saw these people who were clearly ex-veterans who've seen war and who is haunted by what they saw, and who are just walking through the streets screaming at people that's not there. And it's incredibly sad to see that, because I think one of the things that I picked up from everything you spoke about, Darko, is you miss humanity. You miss people just being human to one another. I think the world has gotten very, very cold. I had a conversation related to something completely different, but it boiled down to this with my wife earlier. And I can see that she gets frustrated, angry, and sad about the fact that what I'm saying is that we even have to have conversations about things like that, where it's like, but it's not right. It's like, I know it's not right, but it is what it is. It is the reality that we live in, and that we've kind of sort of created for ourselves, and we don't know how to walk this back. We don't know how to fix this, and instead of it's like the earth, the whole earth is ill. The planet itself is extremely ill, and we're not walking it back. We're kind of just seeing how far we can push it before it's going to be like, all right, doomsday clock is going to be set because we're at that point of no return anymore. And we don't want to get there. I don't know why everybody's running toward a cliff at a million miles an hour and not seeing that there's a cliff right there. This is not going to work. This is not sustainable. Almost nothing we do these days is sustainable. The way we live, the expectations that's placed upon us, the expectations we place on ourselves, because Darko, I can hear that you're blaming yourself for a lot of things. A lot of it's out of your control. But we do that. Every time, like, I do something and I say something, I beat myself up to the point where I'm useless to myself and to anybody else. And then I'm like, oh, now I'm going to beat myself up about that. Because see what you did? Now you got yourself into this. Now you're lying on the bed with your eyes closed and you're good to nobody. So it's like, what the hell? And you ask yourself that age-old question, if a friend asked you this, what would you have told them? And you're like, well, I wouldn't have given them this advice. I would have told them something completely different. And it's like, so why the hell are you treating yourself like why are you your own worst enemy? So I don't know. I think what I take from this conversation is just that life is rough. It's hard. It's too fast, and we're too hard on ourselves. But overall, we're just missing just common humanity between people. Understanding that each person, I think this comes up a lot when people talk about like prostitutes on the street, sex workers. That's someone's daughter that is just in a position in their lives where this is the only thing they have left to literally sell to try and get themselves to a better position. I saw a thing last night where this woman literally just wanted to get herself and her child off the streets and into a home. And this is nobody will give her a job. This is the only thing she has. This is the only means to make money. She doesn't want to do this. She doesn't enjoy this. This is it. She just wants the humanity of people understanding that I'm not doing this by choice. I'm not a bad person. I am in a horrible situation that you don't want to be in and I don't want you to be in. But this is where I am, and I'm doing the best I can. I'm putting on a smile when my child's in the room, and when she leaves, I cry because I know what I have to go to do tonight so that we can eat tomorrow. It's that thing. It's this humanity of seeing people for who they are and realizing it's a dad, it's a partner, it's a friend, like you said, it's a brother, it's a sister, just like you, just like the person next to you, and they deserve the same respect, the same what is the word? Compassion as you do. And maybe sometimes you have to stop and ask, is this the way I want to be treated? And if the answer is no, then you should probably rethink what you're doing and how you're treating other people.
Yeah. One thing that I've had to kind of really learn as part of my own journey, I think it's very topical because, I'm kind of seeing like, okay, we're probably an hour and a half in, and, we probably need to start thinking about like closing up. And, then internally I'm like, shit, is this how we're going to close it? Like everything's fucked and everyone's fucked and everyone just wants humanity, but no one's getting any humanity. And also, by the way, therapy is so expensive and you probably can't afford it. But I do think as well, one thing that I had to learn as part of my own journey is kind of making room for those things and not wanting to pull it back and be like, all right, let's give some hot tips. What can you do for your mental health? Like, take some nice relaxing baths, do self-care or whatever, and just be like, everything is fucked and like I'm in a bad space. The world has gone to shit, and just letting that be for a moment and allowing that to exist. And I think maybe this is also, for me, a space where I need to also just be like, yeah, I probably also need a bit of a kick in the butt to just take up my therapy sessions again. So if that's the only thing that comes from this, like I'm gonna ask you to hold me accountable to that. But I think there's also something to be said where, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Chris Hedges, and he did a thing recently where he kind of, I think, spoke about this, and he said, like the most logical and reasonable response state of being in this day and age is in a state of mourning, as a human. That is part of humanity in this day and age. Any other state of being is insane at this point. And sometimes I also wonder whether a lot of people are just more finely attuned to these things and have a harder time compartmentalizing it. And we kind of just experience that sense of mourning and that sense of hopelessness and, frustration, just like we're just not able to compartmentalize it as much. And then we think like, okay, there's something wrong with me, like my brain isn't working properly. And, there's something to be said about that. There are parts of my brain that are just like apeshit crazy. And and there's a reason, like some of the meds I take, like really has made me a much more functional human being. But I think there's also parts of that you should be careful to pathologize and not be like, there is reason to feel hopeless. There is reason to be upset and feel distraught. But I think, maybe from a Stoic perspective or whatever, but where do you go from there? Which I guess is the follow-up question. Not how do you convince yourself that things aren't desperate and things aren't severe and insane, but like what, given that, and you allow that to be, where do you go from there? Yeah, I guess that's maybe like as good of a place to end as any. But I bring this up a lot, and it's like whenever you talk about something like this, there's just so many things that untangle when you start talking about it, that there's never any logical place to kind of just wrap it up and tie a bow and say like, cool, the end of conversation. And like I said the same when I did my DevConf talk on mental illness as well, is that, like it's pretty much like how much time is there? That's how long we're going to talk, because you never reach a conclusion because it's just so much to unpack. But yeah, I don't know, like maybe we should start like closing things up. I don't know, Skulk, whether there or Darko, whether there's anything else you guys would be keen to maybe just touch on before then.
Yeah, listen, I think the world, social media is playing a pretty big part in that whole disconnect and whatever, and culture wars and us against them and, whoever else it is. But then similarly, the things that don't drive advertising clicks and clickbait and shit is the good things that people do. And sensationalism sells stories, and unfortunately Google has monetized the internet, and that's what basically drives people to click on articles, and then that's kind of drives that hate and frustration. But I think a lot of good as well. If you ignore it, there was shit when our parents were growing up as well. I mean, nuclear war, AIDS, all sorts of shit, right? My parents lived through a civil war and went to a country that they didn't understand just to raise 2 kids. So they made it, they had their own shit. But where I've never been the person to self-harm or anything like that, as much as I've had sort of deep what if thoughts in my head, like, fuck, I was like, I'm 40. How much longer do I have to work before I can stop working and just enjoy my life and shit, And in the end, I'd always been like, okay, but like that'll be easy, but then I'm gonna miss all this other shit. Like I'm gonna miss the first day that I get my Porsche, or I'm gonna miss the first day that like I see my kid go to school, and and then what if you remove the cliche default answers like, I live for my family, I do all this other stuff. One session, it wasn't with Psych Central, but it was another, more of a like a facilitator, just like a person that listened, like a life coach. A life coach, that's the term. And she told me that what I do is I try and keep um, the inner child happy. And I think everybody does that to an extent, but I see that little boy, and often I'll see pictures of myself as that little boy, and like I was like, that guy had dreams, he wanted to do some cool things, and I do it for him. I do it for him, how I treat other people, the things I buy myself, the experiences I have with my daughter and my girlfriend. I do it for him. And that fills me with just contentment that he'd be happy for me, if he knew, right? Like Marty, 1985 Marty would be happy for like 1955 Marty, like that sort of stuff. So I ultimately have better, or I feel a lot better about a lot of things, knowing that 1994 me would be like, fuck yeah, man, it's cool. Like, I can't wait to get to you. That's kind of my ultimate sort of driving force. Yeah.
Geez, that's amazing. I'm not saying this to kind of just like be polite or whatever. That is really amazing. I'm going to keep that with me for a while. Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
such a great approach. Yeah.
I don't have anything to add to that. I think it's
Oh
great.
no! I was hoping you can like make sense of like tie up this whole mess. But no, like this was, yeah. I can give it a go. I can give it a go. I've tied up some bad code in my life, so like I can probably tie up the last hour as well. Yeah, like this is good. This is really good. I think, despite like whether this is a good episode for mental health in tech or not, like for me, just as a person, kind of like being part of this is really good. I think it was a good experience now, and yeah, I think like it's also just a bit of a reminder for myself that I need to like seriously think about taking up like my therapy sessions and stuff again. And yeah, like I think I'll also see where that goes. Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great evening. And I don't know, Skull, there's nothing you want to add. Darko, I don't know if there's anything you want to add in closing.
I've talked too much.
No, that was amazing. I'm literally thinking we should probably do a part 2, but yeah, we'll give you some time to recover. But yeah, cool. Let's end it there. Thanks, guys. This was really, really great, and yeah, we'll chat again soon.
Thanks, gents. Have a good weekend. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Darko. This was good.